Welcome to Lecture 7 of CVE 2010. We continue with the types of constitutions that we discussed in the previous lecture, which is Lecture 6. Okay. The number 5 type of constitution that we are discussing is called the unitary constitution. The unitary constitution. The unitary constitution is basically based on sovereignty of a nation state. Okay, sovereignty of a nation state, and therefore this sovereignty can mean control or power or independence. When we say as Zambians we are a sovereign nation, it simply means that we are in total control of ourselves. Okay, we have total power of ourselves, or we are independent. That's sovereignty. So sovereignty of this constitution lies exclusively with the central government. So the unitary type of constitution simply means the control or the power of this constitution lies exclusively with the central government, meaning the central government in this context has got the absolute power over whatever is happening in the country. Most of the power, the extreme power, is with the central government. So this is the type of the constitution. Okay. Subnational authorities, whether regional or local, may make policy as well as implement it, but they do so by permission of the center rather. So much as we have, in other words, this type of constitution does not allow the aspect of decentralization. Okay, where we have power disseminated to the branches of the hierarchy or of the nation, but most of the power is centered on the central government. Okay, the central government has got exclusive power to make policies, to deliberate on policies, to make decisions. The governance process altogether is centered on the central powers. Okay, these subnational authorities, probably we can take it in the context of provinces or districts. They don't have so many powers, much as we have these branches, but this type of constitution doesn't allow decentralization of powers to the extent where sub-authorities, they can make their own decisions. All the decisions are made by the central government. Basically, this is the unitary type of constitution. Okay. Following the unitary type of constitution, we have the federal constitution. The federal constitution, is based on the concept of federalism. This one is based on the concept of federalism. Federalism in this aspect is the principle of sharing sovereignty between the central and state governments. Remember, sovereignty, as I explained in the previous slide, sovereignty is, I'll take you back, sovereignty is the control or the power or the dependency of a nation state, of a body. Okay, and now in the context of federalism, the federal constitution is based on federalism, and federalism is the principle of sharing sovereignty, or the principle of sharing power, the principle of sharing this control, or the independence of this body is shared between the central government and the state governments. Okay, and therefore any political system that puts this idea into practice is called a federation. And a federation in this manner it can be either said as an alliance or a coalition or a partnership. Remember the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, when the British government colonized Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi currently, which were called Northern Southern Rhodesia and Nyasaland, because the British government was using this type of constitution to rule the three countries, which is the federal constitution. The political system then was called the federation. Okay, because it was a constitution, one constitution which was ruling three countries, and therefore the sovereignty of the government then was being shared. Okay, and this type of constitution, the federal constitution, mainly applies to countries that have got states. Okay, countries that have got states, such that the power, the principle of sharing here is between the central government, okay, the central government, which is the mother government, so to say. The central government here is the mother government, okay? And this mother government, which is the whole nation, is got baby governments, okay? Just for illustration purposes. It's got the baby governments, which we call now states in the actual sense. So the power or the sovereignty is shared between the central, the mother government shares. The mother government does not become selfish in just the illustrative terms. You know, it's got this heart to give some powers to the baby governments, which are the states. Okay, and so these states, they've got the authority to make their own policies. They know they, much as they have the authority to make their own policies, they recognize the fact that there's this mother government, which is the central government. So most of the powers are tapped from the central government, and therefore the central government has given somehow, a leeway or some authority or some power to say you can be independent. Let's share this power that we have. Okay, and therefore it is only the countries that have states which are practicing this kind of the constitution, or which have in place this kind of the constitution. Okay, and the examples of federal constitutions or countries with federal constitution is in Nigeria got states. Okay, Ethiopia is practicing federal constitution. USA, has got states. No wonder it's called the United States of America. It is a country that is comprised of states. So we have, of all the three and others, of course, these are just examples. We have the mother government, okay, which is the central government, which has control of all the states. But because we have this kind of arrangement where we have states, we also have, baby or sub-nationals, where these baby nations, they've got their own mini governance systems, okay? They have got their own rules to some extent, which are a bit different from the mother government. They're a bit independent in their own sense. So this is the federal constitution. Remember, federal constitution is based on federalism, and federalism is simply the principle of sharing power. Okay? Power between what? Between the mother government, which is the central government, and the baby government, which in this context these are states. Okay? And federalism, you have to understand that it is about partnership. Okay? It's about collusion. Okay? In our own language, street language, you can say collabo. Let's collaborate. We have this in common. And so let's partner. Let's come together for the common good, for our own good. Okay? And examples of federal constitutions or countries that embody federal constitution are countries that have got states. Like in our African context, we have Nigeria, we have Ethiopia. Outside the African continent, we have the USA. Okay. Next, we have the flexible constitution. The flexible constitution, basically, this one, from the word flexibility, if any constitution of any type becomes easy or readily changeable, it explains it all. It's a flexible constitution. Okay, it just requires a simple majority or a quarter majority in parliament for it to be amended. As simple as that. So when you hear of any constitution out there, that constitution, they only had a simple majority in parliament and some provision or some provisions were amended. Bear in mind, something in mind has to click that definitely that was a simple, that was a flexible constitution. Okay. Following a flexible constitution, we have a direct opposite to the flexible constitution, which is rigid constitution. Rigid, from the term rigid, just the term rigid can tell you a story. From the term rigidity, very rigid. If someone is saying that person is very rigid. You just say that person is very difficult. Okay, is not easily approachable. Rigidity in this term is simply very difficult. Rigid constitution is not easily amendable, and therefore it requires a special approval for its amendment of any of its provisions, such as probably the referendum, okay, or supermajority in parliament. That's basically about it. The rigid constitution. You don't just go to the constitution and amend it. By the way, in the language, in civic education language, we don't say change. We say amend. That's the accepted language. To amend simply means to change. So don't think it's a complex word. So a rigid constitution is something, it's a constitution that does not easily allow anyone to tamper with. It requires a supermajority in parliament to say now we can go to any provision or provisions in the constitution that really requires serious change, or that really requires serious amendment, and therefore it can be amended. Basically, that's all about the rigid constitution. So you have to bear in mind what this whole unit is all about. A unitary is simply where power is exclusively, embedded in the central government, in the mother government. These other authorities or institutions or organs, they don't have much power. That's the unitary kind of constitution. Opposite to the unitary that you have to know is the federal. The federal is where there's collabo in our street language, where power is shared between the mother government, which is the central government, and the state government, which is the baby government, which are states. And you have to know that federalism is simply means partnership or coalition or alliance, and therefore countries that have states are the ones practicing federal, the ones having federal kind of constitutions. For example, Nigeria or United States. No wonder it's called United States. They are states which are united in one country. Okay, and the flexible constitution, which is readily amended by a simple majority in parliament, either of its provision or provisions. That's all you need to understand. Opposite to that, we have the rigid constitution, which requires supermajority or a special approval for its amendment of the provisions or provision. For example, maybe a referendum. Okay, and you have to bear in mind, if you've observed as we learn this type of constitutions, they are very much similar or they are total opposite to one another. Evolved constitution is very much similar to an unwritten constitution. Okay, enacted constitution is very much similar to a written a constitution. Okay, and federal constitution is the total direct opposite to federal constitution is a total direct to the unitary constitution. This one. A flexible constitution is a total direct of the rigid constitution. I hope we've picked one or two things. Thank you.